Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 424 featuring Chris Browne, who is the global visual effects supervisor over at Sony Pictures Animation. But more importantly, he's actually also a writer and director who's done a ton of very interesting shorts, award-winning shorts, and it's been really cool to talk to him about that. We get into his early childhood where he actually talked about running around with a camera, not too dissimilar from the kids from Super 8 in a lot of ways, which is kind of fun, trying to capture the world around him. Led him to a very interesting career, which he talks us about, and which also got him to do his first short, which he put out and actually got some interesting awards and recognition for him. And then that eventually led to him sort of starting his own company called Digital Alchemy, which he did very well, and now sort of led to his career over at Sony Pictures Animation. So really cool background in his career, but we also talk a lot about his shorts and his ambitions as a director and as a writer. And we talk specifically about his latest one called Pleroma, which is very cool, and talk about the techniques that he used for that and how he did it, and a really kind of interesting path for him. So it was really great talking to Chris. He's a super nice guy, and I can't wait to see what he does next. All right, we don't have any specific products or events going on right now, but of course you can always just go to chaos.com/events if you want to check out any events coming up. And if you want to check out anything going on at the podcast, just go to chaos.com/cggarage. And then if you go, all of the podcasts are recorded there or posted there, so you can always check out previous episodes there. You can always go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/cggarage podcast. And of course, if you want to watch us, very, very popular now these days, a lot of people are watching podcasts on YouTube. Just go to our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/chaosgrouptv. If you have any suggestions for podcasts, we would love to hear from them. This one was a suggestion, so we would love to hear more of them. That is labs@chaos.com is our email. That's the best way to reach us, labs@chaos.com. All right, but for now, please enjoy episode number 424 with Chris Browne.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
All right, well, Chris, the two Chris's are coming together and talk about some bunch of stuff. Obviously, you want to know a lot about Pleroma. Pleroma, is that how it's pronounced?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. I do want to know about that, but let's get a little bit of a backstory and how you got into doing what you do. Obviously, you have a history in animation, and it's been doing that for a long time. How did you get that interest?
I'll jump into that, but before I get started, I just want to thank you for having me on your show. I'm a huge fan of the podcast, and I got to say, you have such incredible people on here that it's just a big honor to be here. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, the podcast is, I didn't really know it was going to take off. So, but here I am almost 9 years later, and I'm still doing them. So, but yeah, let's get into your stuff,
Sure.
Chris. Let's figure out, like, you know, what was the movie that inspired you, or whatever sort of got you excited about animation.
Well, I would say the earliest memory I have getting really inspired about animation and filmmaking and visual effects as well is definitely early grade school. I would guess even grade 3.
Okay.
You know, of course, I loved all the movies that were coming out around then, and big fan of course, Star Wars and E.T. and Back to the Future. But I also was super into Alfred Hitchcock movies for some reason, like thrillers, and I was also just fascinated with creature features as well. So that stuff, for some reason, all just struck a chord with me at that young age. So that I found it all really inspiring.
Awesome, wonderful. Well, you should join Martini Giant as we talk about movies all day long.
Oh, nice. I'd love to.
Yeah, that's in my other podcast I do. It's just about movies. So,
Awesome.
but yeah, okay. So you were really interested in filmmaking just in general at that age, right?
Yeah, super interested in filmmaking. In fact, I was so interested that I saved, like again, grade three, I saved my allowance for months to finally afford this totally broken down, low quality VHS camcorder. It may have been a high eight, and I purchased it from this dumpy little pawn shop. So I got this used camcorder, and I think it was just over $100, and I just absolutely loved it. Like I was obsessed with the thing, learning how to use it, making films with it. I was shooting videos all the time, and I would just constantly be making videos with friends from school and from the neighborhood.
Oh wow. Okay, so what year are we talking about?
Oh, jeez.
So this must have been in the 80s or 90s? 80s, right?
I I would say early '90s. I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's kind of amazing. And where were you at this time?
I was born in Montreal, and then but I grew up most of my youth in Aurora, Ontario. So this is just north of Toronto.
Okay.
So and maybe it was part of not having a lot to do in Aurora as well. So this is my sort of my fun, so to speak. But anyways, I think I would have been fascinated with it no matter where I grew up. But
That's amazing. That's
yeah.
amazing. And so what got you into animation? Obviously filmmaking and animation are slightly different.
Oh yeah. So basically, I'm making a ton of films with friends and videos, and they always had this sort of science fiction element to it. So what I did was I would always be introducing special effects. So I would build model spaceships and then blow them up with firecrackers. I had these creature puppets that would come in and attack people. Again, really into that whole like creature feature kind of thing. And I was
Sure.
just completely fascinated again with the whole process. But as far as animation, I really started getting into stop motion animation. So I was like a big fan of playing with plasticine and building sculptures, and I just started experimenting with claymation and making animated films with that. And eventually, on our home computer, we had this very simplistic PC Paint program that was able to capture multiple frames. So extremely crude, like 8-bit style.
Hmm.
But I was just able to string together these totally hilarious and bizarre animated movies that I would just make and basically show friends, and sometimes they would spill into the live action stuff, and it'd be this weird sort of mix of experimental filmmaking, but it always sort of had a story to it. So it wasn't so much experimental filmmaking, but more you know, just very interesting and weird kind of stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah, that's very cool that you were doing. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Super 8. Remember the movie Super 8?
Totally. That movie was like totally connected with me
Yeah,
on
I
many
bet.
levels, especially the whole I love creatures and aliens, but also the filmmaking side. So yeah, that had a very familiar feeling to it.
That's incredible. Well, cool. Okay, so that sounds fascinating. So, did you eventually decide to go to school for this? Is that what you did?
Well, what happened was, I went to business school, and that was very much a sort of a something to fall back on kind of thing. Or it just seemed like a more logical route, even though my heart was 100% into filmmaking and animation. But I just sort of forced myself on that path, and I actually learned a lot. And we can get to what I learned and how that affected my career later. But I was in school for my commerce degree. But while
Hmm.
I was in school, I still had this obsession with working on these personal projects. So I would recruit fellow students to be involved. And at that time, I really started getting into CG animation. So I got one of the primitive versions of 3D Studio on my
Hmm.
home computer. And I just started doing CG graphics with that in my spare time and just teaching myself. And I don't even think YouTube was around back then. And if it was, they certainly didn't have any tutorials on it or anything like
Mm.
that. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like learning from textbooks that I ordered online. And it was bit of a grueling process, but still I was, 100% committed. I was logging in hours every night, and then at lunch I'd rush back to my dorm and be working on stuff. And I don't know, I was just having a blast with it. So after I finished my commerce degree, I decided then, okay, I really want to focus on this and take it seriously. So I did go to animation school. It was the Vancouver Institute of Media Arts.
Yeah.
And in my application, I showed my portfolio. And this is, a bulk of stuff cut together that I had worked on just on my own. And they said, we will let you into our 18-month program, but we think you only need to actually attend for 6 months because you're so far along. So I'm like, I was really excited about it. If I could go through the program in 6 months and be working in the industry quickly after that, I was like, sign me up. So,
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was really lucky, and I think it's just the hard work I put in ahead of time. I think that did it. I mean, absolutely. So.
Right. Right. Okay. So after you graduated from there, where did you start looking for jobs in that space?
Well, while I was in school, actually, before I graduated, I created a 5-minute animated short film, and it was very
Okay.
visual effects heavy, and it took place in the Victorian era, so it was very moody and stylized, and it was about these creatures. And that particular film actually went on to be accepted in 18 international film festivals around the world and won multiple awards. And this was like sort of my first time submitting something that I had made, and it got this incredible response. So I was
That's
pumped.
amazing. What was the name of the film?
Gibb is named after the character Gibson, and yeah, it was just this weird, creepy little film, but people just really enjoyed, I think, the stylistic of it, and yeah,
Sure.
it was cool.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't show it to anyone now, but at the time, it was people were really liking it.
How
So
long was the film?
it was about 5 minutes long.
Okay. That was a lot of rendering back then.
That was a brutal amount. In fact, all the profs told me there's no way you can finish a 5-minute film. It's like it'll be impossible. You won't finish it by the time you need to graduate. And to be honest, they were absolutely right. So what I did was I convinced the school to be on the security where I can help lock up late at night and set the alarms and that kind of thing. And of course, in those moments, I took full advantage to be working on my film on the computer equipment because I really had nothing to work on at home.
Yeah.
And I was able to sort of stretch my stay out a little longer just to get the project finished. So.
Yeah, that's really cool. I remember I was doing my thesis in architecture school, and I was also using 3D Studio at the time. And we didn't really have a render farm, so I just would do shots on different computers. And it was during Christmas break, so no one was there. So I just took over every computer in the lab
Totally.
and just like put my name on everything. It's like, if you need this computer, call me or whatever. But I was like, I just rendering on everything.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah. I know exactly what that's like. Well, that's pretty cool that you did, that was able to achieve that. So that must have gotten you a lot of attention in some ways, right?
It did. I mean, it was again like a lot of people were talking about it and sharing it around. I had a lot of people asking me if they can get a copy of it just to show their friends, or even just I got a lot of interest, like I said, from the film festivals. So it won some audience awards and that kind of thing. And the funny thing is, it wasn't like the film festival seemed to really like the sort of art dramatic side, but this was more of that, again, creature sort of thriller stuff. But I
Right.
think it was just the style that really made it take off. So yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
pretty cool.
That's awesome. Okay. So where did you go from here? Where's your journey after this?
So after that, I worked in the visual effects and gaming cinematic industry. I sort of bounced around from different shops, smaller sort of shops. And after a little while of doing that, my former teacher from animation school, who had no longer been working there, he had left recently,
Yeah.
called me up and asked if I wanted to help him out with some freelance work. So I was the only student he had contacted to do this. So I'm like, yeah, definitely. I was very interested in trying the freelance thing.
Right.
So we started working on a couple of freelance jobs together, and oddly, before we even finished, another one would come in, and then another one would come in, and they'd each get bigger and bigger in scope. So we just said, like, why don't we just call ourselves a company, get some office space, give ourselves a name, and we'll just start running this like a studio. And I was totally into that. So we were called Digital Alchemy Entertainment.
Right.
And these projects, it was just a very organic growth. So a new project would come in. Now we need a few more computers to rendering. Again, we didn't have a render farm at the time either.
Right.
So we had to spread that out on some computers, and then we had to hire a few artists to help out. And then bigger projects came in, so we needed more artists. So eventually we acquired the entire floor of a downtown building in Vancouver, Canada. And it was pretty cool. I mean, we were tackling live action VFX work. We were also doing animated television series work. We did commercials, both live action and animated. I got to direct commercials. I even directed a series in partnership with Rainmaker at the time.
Oh, right.
And at one point, I remember walking into Chapters. And for people who don't know Chapters, it's basically the Barnes and Noble of Canada.
Okay.
I was able to walk in and see 4 cover stories about our company in various businesses and entertainment magazines. So
Wow.
I was like, we were flying high. Things were going fantastic.
That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. And so how long did you guys run the company for?
So we ran the company for 9 years.
Wow.
So it was quite a long time. Didn't quite make it to a decade. What happened was there was the big stock market crash of 2008.
Yeah.
And everything dried up. And we were doing network television stuff, and there was no streaming back then. Netflix was a blip on the radar. I think they were maybe early stage mailing DVDs or something, but yeah, it was pretty dry. Extremely so. So, we held on for as long as we could, but I sort of had to eventually make the decision that it was time to start pursuing other opportunities.
Right. Right. So what did you start looking for? What were you, I mean, you sounded like you were much more of a generalist at this point too, right?
I would say I still am a generalist. Like
Okay.
I basically and even like style wise, like I've dabbled in many different styles of certainly animation, but also live action VFX work. So just style wise, I'd say I'm a generalist, but even just as a hands-on artist. I mean, with my studio, we wore many different hats. So I was very much involved with even like technical coding, like pipeline tools, building out a pipeline, but also supervising the creative, so doing look development, whether it be hands-on or critiquing artists' work, and yeah, I was also like very much passionate about all areas of production, and I dove in right from modeling, surfacing, rigging, and a big part lighting and compositing as well. So
Okay.
probably a big focus on that.
Gotcha. Yeah, generalists are really pretty good at lighting and compositing
Yeah,
because they
that's-
kind of know what they know what the final image is, what they have in their head, and they know how to get there, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well that's cool. That's really great. All right, so after Alchemy shut down, what were you guys? Where did you decide to move on to?
Well, as I was super lucky, by the way, especially given the market at the time. So Bardel Entertainment actually reached out to me.
Okay.
And it was like I had met the owners, Barry Ward and Delna Bisanya, quite a bit at different conferences as I'm sort of shopping around my studio for work. And I had, built up a pretty good mutual friendship with them and respect. And so they had offered me a position at their studio to basically be a head of CG. So their studio was a 2D animation studio for a long time, but they were sort of just getting into CG. And they had landed 2 of their biggest clients, and they needed someone to sort of build out the infrastructure, but also just make sure everything is as good of quality as it could be, and just run the whole CG side of things. So I thought it was a great opportunity. They felt it was a good fit just from my experience with running my own company, and they had known about how many hats I wore and just how involved I was to pretty much every process. So yeah, so they were really interested in working with me. So they brought me on,
Hmm.
and they had about 80 employees at the time. And I helped grow the studio from 80 employees at one location to about 500 people at 3 locations.
Wow.
And all the time I was like extremely, again, hands-on with not only the pipeline, but the creative critiquing. So it was very much a VFX soup position that I was doubling as well. So
Sure.
but yeah, and I was even doing hands-on look development tests to land new clients. So we would have some, big prestigious film project that they brought or series, and they'd want to see some tests to make sure that either we can hit the quality or even offer a particular style or style options. So I was really involved with those early hands-on look development tests, and then I'd be in the room with the clients, the executives, the creative directors on pitching the look and how we were able to achieve it for their particular project. So it was pretty cool, and this all kind of like has a lot of that business degree sort of circulating around in it as well. So it was kind of definitely had an advantage there, I think.
Yeah, that is interesting that your business degree started to to come back into play. So what kind of work were you guys doing at Bardel?
We were doing we did some feature animated work as well as series work, but probably on the more premium end of series development work. So
Okay.
we were doing work for Nickelodeon, DreamWorks on some of their highest properties, and we were doing like uh, work also directly for Netflix as well,
Okay.
full CG series, full animated series, and yeah, it was super cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. And so what was where were you going from here?
Okay, so I was at Bardel for a decent chunk of time, we'll say,
Sure.
and during that time, I never gave up that passion for my own filmmaking.
Right.
And also, again, still live action visual effects was still a part of me that I really wanted to just delve even more into. So I never gave that up. So while I was at Bardell, I was making my own independent film, live action film,
Yep.
and it was about alien abductions. And I shot all of it myself. So shot, wrote, directed, and did all of the VFX work myself. So on-set VFX supervising, plus every aspect of post. So model, texture, rig, light comp. It was even doing effects sims in Houdini, and
Wow.
just integrating the whole thing together. And even some color grade. Actually, I did go to a studio for color grading actually, because that was the
Okay.
one thing that I hadn't had experience with.
Right.
But yeah, I had a crew that was very generous with their time and effort, and I managed to find some fantastic actors as well. Like I was completely blown away with what they brought to the table. I mean, it was really cool.
But
I loved it.
was this your first? No, I mean, I guess you were doing small live action things when you were a kid, but is this your first sort of bigger production live action you were doing?
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
like this was my first sort of very serious take at the live action filmmaking thing. So
Right.
definitely my biggest endeavor yet on a personal project. So yeah, when I completed it, I mean, we had a crew with lighting and makeup and stuff like that, but still, I still was just fascinated with all of it.
Sure.
So when it was completed, that went on to be selected in about a dozen film festivals, and it won the Leo Award for Best Visual Effects.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. And what was the name of that short?
That one was called Baiting the Abductors.
Awesome. Okay.
So
Right.
that one actually. So for those who don't know, a Leo Award is a provincial award for excellence in film and television, and it's awarded for British Columbia, work in British Columbia.
Right. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was. I was really honored to have won that award, because when I showed up at the ceremony and they listed the nominees, each production had a huge team of people, so they would all cheer when each project was listed for nominees for best visual effects. And
Right.
then when it got to mine, I was like the only VFX artist on the team. So it was pretty intimidating. So I was so thrilled to have won it. It was
That's
definitely
awesome.
it
That's
was
wonderful. Yeah.
it was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay. Okay, well, that's an amazing story. I'm assuming, at some point you were there till what, about 2018 or so?
Yeah, something. Yeah, about 20. Yeah, that's right, 2018. So
Okay.
at that point, so I had put in a good, you know, almost just over half a decade there, and
Right.
I was ready to just start exploring and thinking, what else is out there.
Sure.
And so DreamWorks had actually, there was some representatives from DreamWorks who actually flew out to Vancouver to have a meeting with me, and they went over a plan of how they wanted me to move down to LA, work directly at their headquarters first as a CG supervisor, and then to move up as a studio visual effects supervisor to oversee the look and style of all of their shows. So that was an incredible opportunity. I definitely jumped at the chance for that. That was super cool. So I
And was that
moved.
DreamWorks TV? I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
right. So it's part of Mayo's team and all of that. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so I moved down to LA, and of course, being a filmmaker, it's the place to be.
Sure.
So I moved
Well,
down
Vancouver ain't so shabby.
Vancouver isn't so shabby either, but I kind of wanted to be in the heart of where like the executives were and like sort
Right.
of the big studio decision makers were.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see that whole side of things. I mean, don't
Sure.
get me wrong, I absolutely love Vancouver.
Right.
But yeah, it was a new experience and something to check out.
Sure. Sure. Okay. So did you live around DreamWorks? I mean, around Glendale, or is that where you end up moving to?
Well, close enough. I mean, I moved to Studio City. It's where I'm
Yep.
living right now.
Got it.
So
So,
about a 15-minute drive.
yeah.
So definitely doable.
Yeah. 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 Awesome. Okay. So which shows did you work on when you were at DreamWorks?
Oh, a whole bunch. The first one we did was So here was the thing. Uh, recently before I started working there, NBC Universal had bought DreamWorks.
Right.
So they had brought me to help oversee one of NBC Universal's biggest franchises, which is the Fast and Furious franchise.
Okay.
So they wanted to make an animated series for Fast and Furious.
Yep.
So that was my first show there, and they really wanted to push like the cinematography to the extreme, and the effects as well, and like they just wanted to go gangbusters with this whole approach.
Right.
And they said to me like they really wanted sort of someone who has a cinematic eye for this type of thing, a real filmmaker type mentality. So yeah, that was sort of the opportunity that I really jumped at, and that was my first show there, and it was super awesome and fun to work on, and very action packed.
Yeah, I bet. I bet that's a pretty interesting thing. Were you a fan of the films?
I had seen them. Like I would say I was a fan. Not
Right.
a
Okay.
diehard crazy fan, but
Yeah.
definitely I was entertained by them for sure.
Awesome. Awesome.
And,
Cool,
and
cool.
very excited to sort of put my stamp on it, even in my small corner of the franchise. But
That's so great. Well, very cool. All right. Well, did you work on any other big projects while you were there, or?
oh yeah, definitely. I worked on Kung Fu Panda.
Yep.
There are definitely some series. I'm not sure if I can say yet. Bad Guys was one. Definitely ones that haven't been released quite yet, so I don't
Okay.
think I can mention them. But
Sure.
definitely a big hand. The Jurassic Park series, Camp Cretaceous.
Right.
I helped out in that. I mean, they had their own lighting, compositing supervisor, and effects supervisors, but I had moved by that point into a studio-wide visual effects supervisor role.
Okay.
So I was able to help sort of work with them and check out what they were doing and stuff like that. But that show was pretty well along at that point and doing really well. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know most recently, you've actually been part of Sony Pictures Animation, right?
yes,
So
yes.
you're part of SPA. So what's going on at SPA?
Oh, there's a whole lot going on at Spa. I am.
I mean, obviously everyone's very excited about Spider-Verse, but
Yes,
is there other stuff happening?
that's just a small thing that's going on there. No,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
huge, obviously. And that looks, I got to, I joined, well, I mean, I wasn't involved in it, but I did get the chance to see some dailies for it, and
yeah.
it is like mind blowing. I mean, the first one, like, how could you top that? But this absolutely is insane, and it's amazing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, incredible work being done there, and like I am just beyond thrilled to just be there and be amongst these people and just being a part of what they're doing. So it's super cool.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I am very excited to see that. Now, I don't know if you can tell me what projects you're on because you have, but
Yeah, no, I'm so like new there that I don't think I can say, but I am involved as a sort of VFX supervisor for a new division that's starting.
okay.
So it's that is a I will say it's just a great opportunity, and we're growing a team there that are just getting started. So one of the things that I'm just really enjoying is being able to be at such an early stage with their creative executives and their art directors and showrunners as these shows are just starting to get formed. So that's kind of
And
like that amazing creative moment to be a part of.
and you can't. I'm sure you can't necessarily talk about what that division does or what it is.
Yeah, I don't, not comfortably.
Okay, let's not do that. Okay, but I'm very curious. I'm very curious.
I'll follow up.
We'll
I should have.
definitely follow up. I'm very curious what people do. Yeah, that's what I do. I try to get information.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, but let's talk about Pleroma because I'm
Okay.
very curious about that thing. How long have you been working on this?
So Pleroma I made throughout the pandemic. So I guess it was probably a 2-year endeavor. But keep in mind I was also working full time. So we're talking
Sure.
evenings and weekends.
Right.
So yeah, Pleroma. Yeah, so I guess 2 years over the pandemic. That was definitely my biggest personal project that I've ever done.
Okay.
It's over 200 visual effects shots.
That's a
I,
lot.
it was a lot, especially since I was doing it entirely myself.
Right.
So again, every stage of production, I was like basically the only guy. So
Yep.
I also shot it, shot, directed, cut it together. This one I did color grade myself. And yeah, it was super cool. I loved working on it. So it's done now.
Okay.
It's currently screening at the film festivals, so it's getting a good response.
Excellent.
And actually, one thing super cool and unexpected, well, something I've really wanted but unexpected, was a former executive producer at DreamWorks caught wind of it and he saw it and he was really excited about it. So he contacted me and he was like, "What are you doing with this? This looks super cool. Can we work together in some way?" And I said, "Look, my dream is to make this into a feature film."
Okay.
And
Nice.
so he is currently a writer, working on a feature film at Paramount.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been a EP, so showrunner at DreamWorks for a while, and he has just a ton of experience. He's like a legend in the industry. His name is Tim Hedrick,
Mm-hmm.
and so he and I have uh, written the feature film script adaptation of the short, and we're just about ready to take that to market. So we're both really pumped about that.
That's so cool. I mean, that's the dream, right? That's the dream.
Absolutely,
You
definitely.
make your passion project, you make it your way, you make it the one, and then people say, we want to develop that even further. So that's
Uh,
really cool.
and that's the thing about like part of why I like to tackle all these elements is like when you work on these projects, when would you get the opportunity to like really have your hands on every aspect? It's almost unheard of for funded big productions. So this is sort of like my chance to just really sink my teeth into everything, but also grow my skills, and not only artistically but technically as well, so that when I am VFX supervising, I can really, talk terms with the artists and help offer suggestions on pretty much all levels, and that, it's a big part of why I do it.
Absolutely. No, I totally get it. Well, tell us a little bit about the story. Tell us what Pleroma is all about.
All right, so the plot of the film Pleroma is basically about a corporation, but it takes a whole flip to the idea that robots will take over the lower level jobs. But instead, in this particular story, it's the top executive, chief executive officer of the company, which is a super intelligent AI. So all the human workers are carrying out the orders from the AI. So the philosophy of the people working there is that this AI is infinitely smarter than Albert Einstein. So who are we to know what's best? We'll just do whatever this super intelligence tells us to do.
Right.
So what ends up happening is the AI eventually turns on the workers of this manufacturing plant. So it's up to a discarded prototype robot to crawl out of the wreckage to help the humans and eventually, hopefully, save the day.
Interesting. Interesting. But the motivation of that's interesting. So what is the motivation of the super intelligent AI to have humans? Is because it's building things for it, or what is it trying to do?
Basically,
Right.
yeah. So it is basically having the humans build a technology for it. So super advanced technologies that they can then profit off of. But there's sort of this underlying sinister element to it. And it's a bit of an allegory for corporations that are run more like without the humanity part of it.
Sure.
It's just purely obsessed with profit, and it just takes that to an extreme. So it's sort of the classic robot analogy or AI analogy with stories that it's sort of a genie in the bottle, careful what you wish for kind of thing,
Sure.
because taken to an extreme could lead to a very dangerous place. So that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, for sure. I get it. I get it. That sounds, and like I said, it's becoming more relevant every day with with what AI is happening today. You really don't know where we're going into it. What were some of obviously you obviously have robots that you were trying to animate. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So there are 4 different robots, and I guess the style approach was so this prototype that gets built was built by someone outside of, like, someone working on a home project where it's sort of very much built as a life-saving device. So it is it's crudely built. You see all the machine parts. You see the pistons and the hinges, and it's got over 100 different cables and wires hanging off of it, all of which had dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And you just really see the guts of it sort of clunking and walking around. And so that was very much designed, and the whole design approach for the film was to try and make it as photoreal as possible and very grounded in present day. So every shot is, especially of these machines, is meant to be something that you could mistake for a video from Boston Dynamics, for example.
Right.
So it wasn't like distant future or even near distant future. It's supposed to feel very much like right now.
Right.
So that was one of the robots. So very complicated. I didn't want to do any cheats either. So I did a ton of research on the design of robots from Boston Dynamics and DARPA as well, and just how they worked. Like I was able to find a lot of schematics and just how how the different pistons and hinges and swivels worked, and I built all of those controls. So it was a very complicated rig, but with a more simplistic rig built on top, so that I could easily animate with it.
Sure.
And then there's a more sinister robot that has almost a sort of rubbery coating, so it almost looks kind of like a mannequin, I would say,
Okay.
or like a G.I. Joe action figure, but human size. And the idea of that was this was the corporation, so it's got this rubbery coating, so it's got this sort of like facade, right? The hero, you see the insides, you can see what it's all about, but this one has this sort of almost, a fake sort of, I'm trying to look human, but not quite getting there, almost
uncanny valley.
Exactly. Uncanny valley, but like used to the purpose of the story.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I get it. It's interesting.
And
the
then,
uncanny valley, the original term was for robotics. That's what they used it for originally. So that's very interesting. I like the fact that you're using that as we're trying to look human to try to get empathy from the humans, but it's so creepy. It's turning us off.
Exactly. And it's kind of like corporate advertising and like that whole facade. Like I was trying to work that into the whole stylistic approach for these robots. So there was another robot that I felt was super cool that I spent a ton of time on. And what it is this big sort of disc that rolls and unfolds into a crab and can like chase and attack people. But all of the designs are meant to look like they are very industrial, like for a construction site, except for this guy with the coating. That's sort of like the face of the company from a robotic standpoint. But this machine unfolds into this crab and can crawl up walls and do all kinds of things. And that one I put a lot of effort into the design of, because the way it folded in, I had to research how all these different types of hinges work and can fold in on themselves, and how it could unfold, and the mechanics of how it can make itself roll, even though it's like one disc essentially. So I put a lot of work into like very realistically depicting how all of that would work, and I like was obsessed that I would absolutely not do any cheats. Like it could actually fold. There's no geometry crashing in on itself. There's no things just spitting out of the machine just because it looks cool. It's like it all had to fit.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. All right. So you said you had 200 shots of visual effects. How long was this whole short for?
The short is 10 minutes long.
And you had 200 shots in 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, pretty much every shot was an effect shot,
Right.
and there was a lot of action, like very fast, cutty stuff. So like the action like really ramps up. So yeah, that's pretty much what I was able to cram in there. So.
But how did you do? I mean, you said this was during the pandemic, right? So how was you able to do your shooting during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, there's very few actors in it. So there's only like a couple people, and they are meant to be working in a laboratory. So they had full hazmat suits on. So obviously that was pandemic friendly.
Yeah.
I also I have an actress and who's also a producer who I partner with a lot on these projects. Her name is Kiana Alitaha. So she doubled as a producer and actor.
Yep.
So I was able to, keep the crew small and lean and just, do our thing.
Awesome. What did you shoot it on?
I shot it on a Canon 5D Mark II. So,
nice.
Decent. It's got a good look to it, especially when I have some really nice lenses.
Yeah.
Certainly not the newest camera out there, but again, I wanted more of that cinema verite kind of look, and it just very much lent itself to that.
That's cool.
It kind of fit the style.
That's cool. Well, I saw the trailer for it, and it's pretty great to see that. I can't wait to see the full thing.
Awesome.
But
that's
okay,
high praise from you. Thank you. I know your background, so I appreciate it.
Yeah. You did a lot of effects in there. There's a lot of sort of design. Is there some Houdini in there? What did you use to do this?
Yeah, so I went all out with the Houdini. So Houdini there's a ton of explosions in it. So I wanted this almost like Saving Private Ryan moment where the hero robot is running with just massive explosions going all around. So that was all Houdini.
Right.
I even used Houdini. There's a swarm of these drone robots.
Yes.
That they sort of expand with electrical energy and have this sort of energetic electrical core, almost like one of those Tesla balls, those ones you touch and the electrical bolt. So it's got that kind of vibe with metallic
a plasma
Yeah, like a plasma, but like with floating metal plates around it.
Yep.
So those assets were all built procedurally in Houdini, and I had created Houdini digital assets that can be fed into um, I guess a for loop or what have you to like totally randomize them
Sure.
and control them as a swarm. So some of them would have like bigger, different pieces and stuff like that, just to get a lot of variety. So some Houdini procedural asset building, as well as sort of like the typical effects, sims and stuff like that.
Awesome. And so you, again, this is, but you did this over a course of 2 years, and that's a lot of work to do even on lights and weekends, right?
It was, yeah. It was completely crazy. I mean, when people ask me how I did it, I basically just say whatever time someone would devote to watching TV, playing video games, going for a walk in the park, I pretty much devoted to this project. But again, it was my fun, it was my passion, so I was just 100% invested. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a really cool that you were able to do that, and it looks like you're getting some traction. So when did they go into festivals?
It start. When did it start? I think probably I would say just very early in the new year. I mean, it started getting accepted into festivals around December, but
Okay.
in the new year, like January-ish, the screenings started happening. So it started getting screened, and then the momentum from that, I ended up getting into some magazine articles. So I was on a cover story for AWN, so Animation World Network, VFX World Magazine, Before and Afters magazine, and a magazine that's totally devoted to art, like not even the VFX industry at all. It's like, artists with like massive paintings and sculptures and stuff. So they did a story on it because they just loved the design of the robots, and they just seemed really interested in what went into them. So yeah, it's in this sort of artsy magazine.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at this, I mean, how much inspiration do you get from people like Neil Blomkamp and those guys?
Neil Blomkamp is like my biggest inspiration.
Yeah.
Like I love Neil Blomkamp. I would say, as a filmmaker, the one film out there that I wish I could say I made that would have been District 9.
Right.
Like that was really groundbreaking for me, and it a huge inspiration. And I mean, I watch all of his stuff, all of his shorts, the Oat Studios stuff. Yeah. Like I just eat it up, basically. His commercials too.
Well, I mean, his story is not dissimilar from yours. I mean, District 9 was started as a short called Alive in Joburg, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very similar about a robot and all that other stuff that was happening. So I think that's really interesting to sort of see how this happens, that you're able to sort of look at that history and be inspired, because I think it's really great. I think just that idea of what he's doing and what you're doing seems very, very, very cool. All right. Well, what were some of the biggest challenges you had besides obviously just the huge amount of work?
I can lay one on you.
Okay.
This is so it's pretty intense. So one location that I absolutely had to film at was I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's called Triumph. It's Canada's Particle Nuclear Physics Laboratory.
Okay, like a super collider of some kind?
Exactly, a super collider, and they have, it's like 3 football fields of just machinery packed into this place.
Wow.
People with lab coats walking around with clipboards and analyzing things. You'll see like it almost looked like I put a fog machine on set. In some instances, there's just fog billowing, but it's like legit coming from their equipment. It was incredible. So I approached them to shoot on their location, and they said, like, categorically, no way in hell. Do you know how many times people ask us to film here?
Okay.
But now here's a little tidbit from the past. I had done physics simulations for them with my company, Digital Alchemy. So it was like a corporate gig where they had me do these particle physics, so their scientists could sort of analyze, visualize what's happening, and they can demonstrate that to people. And we just formed a good working relationship during that time. So they said, we will let you come in for one day and film, only because of the relationship we have with you. So I was both thrilled, but also the pressure was on big time because I only had one day, and it was like the location.
Mm-hmm.
So and it played perfectly into the story because look-wise, I wanted the film to not feel like I don't know, how would I do it? Like an Apple store. Like it wasn't sci-fi, clean, white and stuff like that. I wanted it like really industrial and mechanical with like sparks going off and machines moving, like the kind of play, because it's a thriller. So I kind of wanted it to feel like even just being there felt dangerous. Like you can put your hand somewhere, it could either get fried or some machine would so I wanted that vibe. So again, not that it's a dangerous place, but it definitely looks really intense. And so yeah, I was super lucky to film there, but that of course brought its own challenge because I only had a day.
Right.
So I basically was in full sprint mode to grab as much footage as possible.
Yep.
And what I ended up doing was I had to, because I didn't nearly get the amount of content that I needed, so I had to rebuild a lot of those environments myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of photogrammetry, hand sculpting, relighting, like obviously lighting to try and get a photoreal match. And so yeah, like that was a huge challenge just to try and rebuild a seamless sort of manufacturing plant that could feel like it's just part of the film. So big challenge. And they even had to scan us for radiation in certain parts of the laboratory because some of the equipment gave off some radiation, so you can only be there for a little bit and you'd have to leave and they'd scan you and come back.
Wow.
Apparently a girl who worked there her ponytail was touching one of the machines while she's busy working away on something, and when she was leaving they scanned her and like her ponytail had too much radiation, so they had to cut the whole thing off.
Wow.
But this had happened in the past, but I think it's the story they tell for people to be, very careful of what they're touching and where they're going and how long they are in certain areas.
That's pretty intense. Yeah, I can imagine that's not... glad you're an independent film. You wouldn't, if it was done anywhere else, you're not getting the insurance to go there.
Oh, hell no. Hell no.
Yeah.
There's no way. And we only had 3 people on the set at the time.
Sure.
So it was very low maintenance as far as they were concerned.
Well, that's pretty awesome that you were able to do that and figure that out. Okay, well, listen. Generally speaking, with films like this that go into festivals, this one's in festivals, you have to sort of wait till it goes through all of its festival cycle before you can release it online. Do you have an idea of when that's going to be?
I would probably say in early fall.
Early fall. Okay, so we'll definitely follow that. So actually, you know what? Let us know when that happens, and then we can go back into the podcast notes and add the link to it so people can check it out.
That'd be fantastic. Well, actually, if you want, you can add a link for people to see the trailer.
Yeah, I'm totally going to do that. Stuff. No, I will definitely put the trailer
great.
in this.
Okay,
for
awesome.
As well, so.
And if they're interested, there's also a trailer for the Alien Project and some of the other stuff I've worked on if that's of interest. So
yeah, no,
we'll share that as well.
Yeah. All of those links we'll add for sure.
Awesome.
Well, listen, Chris, it's been really amazing hearing your story. I'm excited to see, obviously this short when it comes out, but also find out all the crazy things that you're doing over at Sony, and excited to find out what's going on there. And it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for reaching out to me about this project and telling me about it. I'm so glad we were able to have you on the podcast.
Awesome. And thank you so much. I'm truly honored to be here.